You are watching a Fact TV presentation of the town of Swanzey.
I'm going to call meeting to order at 5:40.
Motion to approve the minutes of January 8th. Sorry,
Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
I'll make a motion for non-public C and D on January 8th. 1, 2, 3. Second.
Motion made. Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Make a motion to the consent agenda.
Second, go ahead. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Public input. Seeing none. John, please.
For the sewer. Oh, the sewer, yes. So the couple of repair things. First was that the furnace at the pump station behind power generator failed, need to be replaced. It obviously as cold as it was time, so the essence, so we had it done, and we're looking to pay for that out of the CIP fund. And the second one was over at the wastewater treatment plant. There's a fan that's used to blow the warm air from the blower, the mechanical room into the lab, so that there's no need to use propane. And the little fan that was in place was having a hard time keeping up. We installed a larger permanent fan with a thermostat, so it can push more air from the blower room and keep up. And once again, avoid having to use a propane heater to keep the light in the bathrooms and everything warm.
What was that from?
Capital.
Is that the LNG, the 40?
LNG is for the North Swanzey, and Penny Electric is for the plant.
And we need to take that on the CIP for 10.
Yes.
Make a motion.
West Swansea sewer capital.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
One's for north and one's for west, right? One's for north and one's for west.
Yes, the LNG is for North Swansea, and the Penny Electric is for the west for the plant.
Jennifer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy New Year to everybody. Representative Jennifer Rose. I represent Cheshire County District 17, Winchester, Richmond, Swansea, Troy, and Fitzwilliam. So last legislative session, I apologize, I don't know the bill, the title of the bill, but there was a bill that was passed that is supposed to help towns with welfare budgets when somebody from another town may have gone to that other town. And in my humble opinion, that bill created a lot of confusion, and it's creating a lot of division between towns. So essentially what happens is, the way the current welfare law is written, which is RSA 165A, and thanks to your resident Edna, I know way more about this law than I wish I knew. But she is the master at it, and she taught me a lot with that. So with that being said, the way the law is currently written says, whenever a person in any town is poor and able to support himself, he shall be relieved and maintained by the overseer of public welfare, whether or not he has residence there. So I wrote a bill this term. It's actually House Bill 348. And what I'm trying to do is say, so you know how the town is allowed to adopt guidelines for their welfare administrator, whatever the title may be. The problem is the state gives you these specific mandates that are non-negotiable, but they say, well, you're allowed to have your own guidelines. But within these guidelines are these non-negotiable things, and one of them being whether or not a person is actually a resident in the town. So what happens is you might have a person that lives in Swansea for whatever reason, they Keene, whether they have been evicted, whether they have moved, whatever the reason may be, they may not be in Keene. And they go to the public welfare and say, look, I'm not able to pay my rent or medication. There's a lot of things in the list that welfare has to cover. So now, the way that new law is written, Keene may say, okay, you know, here you are, Mrs. Smith, you know, maybe there's a voucher for a rent or medicine. Again, use your imagination on the example. Then now what happens is Keene can call Swanzey and say, hey, you owe us X amount of dollars because this was one of your residents that we, you know, provided some service for. Well, okay, but maybe that person went to that other town because they were denied in the town of Swanzey. It could be that they were denied because the guidelines that Swanzey has put forth, that particular person maybe did not qualify in the town of Swanzey. Now, generally speaking, for reasonable conditions, but they may qualify in the town or the city of Keene. So now, who's to say whether or not this money really needs to be reimbursed or not? There's obviously extreme situations. They're not everyday occurrences. Obviously, those do happen as well. However, I've heard a lot from the town representative. I've heard a lot from taxpayers in general. So what I'm attempting to do is I wrote this legislation, again, it's House Bill 348, that basically is going to give the towns the option to put in their own guidelines if they want a person to have to actually be a resident for up to 90 days before the town has to actually provide this particular welfare service, whether it be rent, medication, gas, whatever have you. So I wanted to be very, very careful not to say, no, you must live in the town for 90 days. With all due respect, you guys might meet as a select board and say, we're perfectly fine for anybody that can come whenever they want, we're fine with that. That's your discretion. As it is now, we don't have that option whatsoever. So the way I wrote it will give you guys the option to meet, if you choose, make that be part of your welfare guidelines. And with proving residence, I wrote a little clause in there that says for the sake of, this particular paragraph, residents, they can show that whether it be a solid lease, a utility bill, maybe car registration, keeping in mind everybody's name might not be on that lease, but they might obviously live in that particular home. So in my opinion, I think that this is an awful unfunded mandate. The reason the state says that it's not an unfunded mandate is because they say, well, towns are allowed to adopt their own guidelines. Okay, and we just have this vicious circle round and round because, well, you gave us these things that we're not allowed to even discuss whether or not. So I wrote the bill, and I'm here tonight asking for you to please support this legislation. And if it's all possible for you guys to discuss it, and if you were able to write a letter to the municipal and county committee, they're going to be hearing this bill next Thursday that I just found out this afternoon. And I would be very grateful if you guys would discuss that and, like I said, write a letter on this behalf. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Would you be able to get us a copy of the draft and to whom to send the letter of support?
Yes, I will, when I sit down, I will email your administrator a copy of the legislation, and then just that it's going to the municipal and county budget, the municipal and county budget, so that will send a copy of the legislation.
And this person said 90 days, they have to live in Swansea, and they can go by. So while they wait for that 90 days, if they came from another town, do they get to go back there? 90 days is 3 months. Can they go back and see if they can get their original town where they came from for assistance on that waiting period of 90 days? How does that work?
So thank you for the question. So to be clear, you would not have to decide as a town that you want it to be 90 days. You could say, you know what, let's let them live here for 30 days. So it's up to 90 days, but not over. We wouldn't want, well, I personally think it should be your decision. It would be up to the 90 days. In this situation, there's always going to be people that are going to fall through a crack. There's always going to be exceptions to the rule. We do have, this is a situation of particular housing, if that's being the case. Remember, if there's a domestic violence situation, we absolutely have, shelters for those extreme situations. We do have, shelters that are doing routine. And if a person calls like that, it's a 211 or 221, if you're not here, if you guys have already gone home for the day, that's the number the person's going to be calling anyway. My understanding is, even if the person calls, like say the welfare director, generally speaking, they say, you have to call this number first if you go through that route. What happens is that a lot of people simply don't want to do that, and then they start making these situations. The way it's written now is there's nowhere, nobody said where they just kind of do whatever they want.
I have a question. Is it the reimbursement part of it that you're addressing with your bill? Or, you mentioned about the city of Keene wanting reimbursement from the town of Swanzey. Is that what you're addressing in your bill?
Thanks for the question, but actually, not necessarily, but the reimbursement part has created a lot of confusion because, as I was mentioning, one town's guidelines, if I make this an example, the town of Swanzey may say, look, it is reasonable to think that a person's going to have a car payment. That's reasonable, right? That's back and forth work. Another town may say, nope, you're not allowed to have, so they keep your monthly budget and your monthly expenses. The town of Swanzey might say, okay, you can have a car payment up to say $200, you can have a cell phone bill, you can have cable, you can have all these different bills. Where another town may say, okay, you can have a car payment, but we don't want to see a cable bill, we don't want to see all these other expenses. So now one town, right, so town B might say, sure, here you go, we're going to provide, I don't know, 3 months, whatever it is, a hotel stay for a week. And now they come back to Swanzey and say, we don't need to give us money because we provided the service to your residents. Well, but they didn't qualify, right? So one town may qualify and another they don't. And that's where the confusion lies, is because there is no standard that anybody has to follow. And now the towns are like, gridlocked over who owes who money when there's no set of rules anywhere.
So your bill would address that if it was not allowable in the town of Swanzey, then another town could not ask for reimbursement for that.
The way I would word it, that would actually be ideal, right? But then again, that is never going to get resolved because there's no way to say what one town has to do over another. So the way I'm attempting to address it is for Swanzey to be able to at least say, we want you to live here up to whatever amount of days they would choose, and that's going to prevent, hopefully, at least some of this, you owe me money, because the town will be able to say from the get-go, you don't follow that the town.
I still don't quite get what you're saying, but we're not going to bring on.
Okay.
What she means is that people will just show up here now, go in and try to get on the system, either get denied or whatever, and then go to Keene and enter a homeless shelter, and then Keene says, sponsor you up, because that's where they came from. And if they don't meet our criteria, we should know anyway.
And you had to have been here at least, we'll say, 30 days, to show up in another place.
So they can go back to Bellas Falls or wherever.
Not current. Thank you.
Is there the safeguard that person A goes to Edna and is denied, and then goes to community C and is accepted? when they bill us, are we able to go back and indicate that we had denied based on our criteria, so therefore we're not going to reimburse?
So thank you for the question, Mr. Fletcher. My understanding is that there isn't even a mechanism that makes a town have to reimburse. So town B doesn't legally have to reimburse town A. It's just creating where the towns are getting mad at each other, right? And
That's fine.
they're putting the welfare directors in bad situations because they're like, we didn't qualify here. At least in this situation, town B or C wouldn't have to even accept the application because right off the bat, they're not meeting that basic guideline of being resident of town for X amount of days. That's my hope, to be able to at least be able to stop that part and doesn't have to go any further. I'm hopeful.
So is the primary criterion that you're asking us to consider is that if this bill passes, that we consider a time period? Could be 0, could be 90. Otherwise, we've got criteria in place that are not impacted by this.
Yeah, so you guys already have your welfare guidelines. Some towns revisit those once a year, whenever like a new board comes in. Some have not revisited them in years and years and years, this kind of experience. The way I'm hoping that it gets passed, you don't have to do anything if you don't want to. If you're perfectly happy with the way your guidelines are and you don't want to fix it at all, that's up to you. If you do want to say, you know what, I do think that the person should be a resident here. If we're going to ask our community, right? I mean, well, I don't know how much your welfare budget is. I imagine it's probably about 75 grand, maybe more. It's 100. I mean,
That would be nice.
all right, so I know
280.
280. Okay, so there's another town that has less than 2,000 people, and theirs is about $40,000. Okay, so I personally think if you're going to ask your residents of Swanzey to raise taxation for $200,000 or more, that the person receiving that benefit, at the very least, should be a resident in your town. Now, it would be up to you guys to decide if you want them to be a resident for anywhere from 0 to 90 days. That would all be on you. I just want to give you guys an option where now you don't have that option at all. I just don't think it's right, especially considering how much, I did not know yours was that high. Now everybody here does. But I think that if you're going to ask the people that are working 2 jobs to fund that particular line item, the people that are receiving it should be residents. Good time. You guys can do what you like to choose.
What would be the time?
I don't know if it's 60 days after passage.
When would it pass? What would it
Oh, so the hearing for it is a week from tomorrow. I don't know when the committee's going to actually hold the executive session on it, and then to go to the floor, and it's go to the Senate. It might end up going to a committee conference, which of course will be the summer. I think realistically, nothing will probably happen until the summer if it made it through everything smooth sailing. Nothing usually makes it through smooth sailing. I suspect there will probably be amendments. This gentleman actually brought up a really good idea. I mean, there's a good clause in there about, being able to say, no, we're not giving you back your money. Thank you for bringing that up. But certainly when I go to the committee next week, there may be some thought to it, and there might be an amendment, or they might kill it. They might just go all together, and then you're no worse off than you are now. Other than I got a conversation going, and maybe somebody, gave something more interesting.
What would be some of the objections, other than from the larger cities? What would be some of the objections?
I would think that the larger cities actually wouldn't object. I would think that, I think the thought of the people that make fault returns, right? So, that brings up the point. So what's going to happen if the person just moves from A and now they're moving to B? But I do know there's an example, again, this probably is a rare example, but it happened, where a person signed a lease. It was for about $1,800 a month. Their first rent payment was not even due. They went to the town and said, I need you to pay this month's rent. the question was, well, you haven't even worked for 30 days, it was a plan, and it was said, well, I was told that you would have to pay it, I really wasn't concerned about that. Why did you sign it? Because I had to. Oh my gosh, right? And so again, I realize that's an extreme situation, but that happens all the time. So I think you're going to have people like that, right? They move from one town, they move to another, maybe something bad happens along the way. I mean, bad things happen to people all the time, but I still think that there's still assistance out there of not having to go to the taxpayers of town to pay the rent because you signed a lease you go for. So I think that's going to be
See you Thursday.
Thank you for filing that. If only we knew someone on that committee.
Wouldn't that be nice? So just to reiterate, I'm going to email Michael I'll do it now, and then you could just please send a letter. Thank you.
He has a letter to that committee.
Okay,
Earlier.
Yeah.
thank you.
I'll plan to be there unless I can't imagine there are any objections, so I think that's very important.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it being 6 o'clock, I'm going to call the public hearing, fire station bond to order.
Some people got
And just to remind everybody, kind of address your questions to the board, and the answer will hopefully come. And we're not going to have a dialogue or a debate on the issue. Ask the questions to us, and we'll try to get the answer. And it's good, you do ask a question, you get recognized, state your name, and where you're from, for making. Thank you. Fired up? You want to do the opening, or do you want to let Mike do it and then ask the question?
Well, just give me my time, and just do something, that's all.
You're going to yield your time to Michael?
Yeah, right.
Training for this office. You need to go older, not experience. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience while the technology gets operates. So my name is Mike Brandley. I'm Swanzey Town Administrator, and we'll be your tour guide here while we work our way through the kind of presentation aspects. And just feel free to raise your hand if you have questions at any point. We'll try to select you and hopefully answer your questions like the chairman mentioned. Josh, I'm going to jump to the next one. So I'd like to start these discussions with this. So this is the 2024 tax rate breakdown for Swanzey, so that's last year. The piece we're talking about today is only the town, the 27%. So if you hear increases of 5%, that's not necessarily your whole tax bill that you just received in December. It's of the town portion. So the town portion of the tax bill that you got is about 27%. So just for some perspective. So tax rate estimates that we're going to outline as we go through are based on 2024 values. So as probably everyone here is aware, Swanzey went through a reassessment last year, 2024, and values increased significantly. The rate also decreased, but not in a correlation. It didn't increase a certain percent and go down the same percent. So just by way of reference. And then based on private development, so people see a lot of these buildings, FW Web, or the apartments on Route 12, see all that stuff happening. When is that going to effect and help with the taxes? So with those properties that I mentioned were not fully constructed as of April 1st, so they weren't factored into the value. So we're expecting some of those larger projects are going to be taxed at their full value next year, and hopefully again will help to bring down the rate a little bit. So 3 articles that we're not going to talk about at all tonight. So Article 1 is the election of officers. So it's time to folks who want to run for office, elected office, to sign up between now and next Friday. But we're not going to discuss that tonight. Article 2 is zoning amendments recommended by the planning board. They had their own public hearings throughout the last couple months, so we're not going to discuss those. And Article 3 is also a zoning amendment. It was submitted by petition. It also had a public hearing before the planning board, and that one is not recommended by the planning board. We're also not talking about that. So on to the stuff we are going to be talking about. So I'm not going to read that. I'm not going to make you read that. But you do have a copy of it both on the slide and then later your handout has a larger version, which is the full town warrant, which will probably be a little bit easier to read than that on the slide. So Article 4, the slide mentioned, is the first bond article we're here to discuss. So it's a new 6,400 square foot fire station at 321 Old Homestead Highway. It will replace fire station number 2, which is in the basement of Town Hall. The total estimated cost is $3.5 million with a bonding portion of $2.5 million. We'll talk about why those are different in a minute. And the bond rate was quoted by the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank at 3.9%. Wish these numbers were the same, but they're a little bit, we didn't have the bond estimate when we decided how much was going to come from taxation this year. But the full year for the bond at 25 years would cost about $160,000 per year. We're not expecting to have a bond payment in the current year, so we've had $150,000 that would be paid for by basically the initial payment by taxation. So this is not a new subject, probably. Most of you are familiar with something Swanzey's been discussing for the better part of 20 or 30 years. In 2024, the selectmen took a little bit of a different tack than we've taken the last few years. They created an advisory committee, which had approximately 20 members throughout different meetings. They had many meetings, public meetings, mostly here, also at some of the fire stations. Through that process, they developed a new design, smaller design, 25% smaller roughly. And based on their feedback, KCS Architects, which has been the architect on the project the last few go-arounds, developed a floor plan, which we're going to get into. They also lowered the cost of some of the finishing materials, so where things might have been metal before, they might be wood, to try to again get that cost down. While it does get the cost down, it does still address some of the core needs that this project has had right along contamination and decontamination areas after firefighters come back from fires, sanitary facilities, training and accessible office areas, and most importantly for me and the people that I work with, getting the fire trucks out of the basement of the town hall, which is really hazardous. So it says PCS Architects, so they didn't update that, but instead we have Jay Ward, who is the chairman of the Fire Station Advisory Committee, who's going to tell you a little bit about the work product that they developed and potentially answer some questions you might have.
Hi, folks. I'll try to speak up so you can hear me. We met as a committee, we met several times, several members of the committee are here tonight. And we started wanting to consider everything because things hadn't worked. You know, we got the majority of people voting for the fire station, but not enough to on the bottom. So we looked at everything. Do we need a third station? Do we need to replace station number 2? And where do we put it and all that? And we gradually narrowed our focus down to what seemed to make the most sense. And our guiding principle was to try to reduce the cost along the way. So we figured that the main obstacle for the town was that we were proposing stations that were too costly, maybe too big, and therefore too costly. But the need still was there. We had to replace station number 2. As far as we can figure out, it's over 60 years old. 60 years it's been underneath the town hall. And fire trucks are getting bigger. Space isn't getting any bigger. We have some problems with the facility and the way firefighters have to operate in this time of century. So we went through the process that Michael talked about. We looked at lots of different places to put it. We ended up with the same place we've been proposing a fire station in the past because we didn't have to pay any extra money for that site. We also didn't have to wait. If we were going to buy another property, we would have to wait to let the town approve us buying that property. And that would have been another year at least of waiting around. So we tried to, all along the way, we tried to feel that we were minimizing the cost. And we came up with this station, which looks a little different from the one that was proposed last year. And I think you'll see that as we get into the station, that we've changed the design in ways that reflect what we need, but there's not extras there. Not extras. And that allowed us to cut the cost quite a bit. And I can answer questions about more detail on that as we go along. But we also, as part of our process, we went and looked at the Westmoreland station, which was recently built. And that station we were pretty impressed with what they managed to do. And they built their station for a little under $3 million. It's a little smaller station than this one. But we were impressed that they could get that kind of quality for that price, given the fact that our station that was proposed last year had a $5 million price tag. Okay, so let's get into the station here and talk about what we got there. Let's go ahead. So this is the site plan, and when we looked at the site plan, it's the same site as we had last year, but what we wanted to do was try to make the footprint a little bit smaller so that we weren't paying as much money, and we wanted to move it, at least portions of it, closer to the road so that we didn't have as much paving and site work necessary on the site, therefore saving some of the cost. Now, the station is roughly about the same distance from the road as the other station was proposed, but it doesn't extend back as far. And we were able to reduce some of the paving. A lot of the paving is there because the trucks have to turn around, or we have to have the firefighters park on the upper part of the lot, where the firefighters will park when they come to respond to fires, and the bottom part is where the public will park when they want to come to talk to the fire chief and do meetings there. So there are 2 curb cuts. One curb cut down at the bottom is for the public to come and go out of, and the other one is for the fire trucks or the firefighters to come and go out of. And that's, we're told that the state is, in general, been receptive to this kind of work on the highway. Okay, next slide. Inside, the bays that you saw the doors for are on the right, and as you can see, we have the ladder truck in here. The ladder truck right now is not in Station 2, it's in West Station right over here. But where it is in West Station, it's got less than an inch from the ceiling, less than an inch from the back wall, and less than an inch from the front doorway. It doesn't fit in there very easily, and we're not even talking about width in terms of getting in and out of that door. So it's quite a process to get it in and out. And if you, in some cases, there and in station number 2, if the fire trucks have fully inflated tires, they don't get in. Or if the tanker truck isn't fully loaded with water and therefore sitting lower, it doesn't get in. And there's just no ways to make these bays bigger or in the structures that we have. So here's where the ladder truck will fit with some space. It's still got a relatively small space behind it, but it's got space. It'll fit. And if we ever have to replace the ladder truck or any of these trucks that we have in town right now, chances are they're going to be bigger. Because as someone explained to me, they really can't make them longer, but they make them taller these days. And they make them larger. And that's one of the problems we face with Station 2, is it just isn't big enough to accommodate modern trucks. So on the right, and if we look at the first couple rooms there, it's hard to see from where I am. I'm not sure it's any easier to see from here, but if you've got this in your packet, maybe you can see there's a line, a wall that's going to be thicker than the others that will separate the firefighting spaces from the administrative spaces, because in general, good practice is to keep all the firefighting operations separate from the public areas, again, for health and safety. There will be a sprinkler system in here to make sure that it meets code, and that there will be heated primarily with propane, but there's some basic utilities in there that you can't see on this diagram. Now, the difference between this plan and the previous plan from the other year is that a lot of these spaces, these firefighter spaces, everything out here is small. Everything is sized down. So instead of having 25, 30 lockers, we have a more modest number. So we're able to look at the needs of the department and the needs of this station, which is one of 3 stations in Swanzey, and reduce the size of the rooms to what we need. We also have spaces for a women's locker room and a men's locker room, whereas there's only a single bathroom, unisex bathroom in station 2, right? Down at the bottom, in the middle, at the bottom where it juts out, is the decontamination area where a firefighter would go after they've been in a fire. They walk in there, they take off their gear, let it get taken care of in terms of decontamination, the laundry in there before they go into the building. So they wouldn't actually be bringing contaminated gear into the fire station. Right now, from station number 2, if someone comes back from a fire, their gear has to be transported over to West Station here to be decontaminated. Okay, and on the other side, the administrative side, we have offices for the personnel of the fire department that are accessible. Right now, the offices where the fire chief are up a very steep staircase. It's not up to code. People with disabilities can't get there, can't see the fire chief. This would allow us to have the fire chief and the assistant fire chief accessible. The training area, there's a multi-purpose room there where firefighters can do training or have meetings about procedures or debriefing about fires or whatever, is much smaller than the other area that was proposed last year. And there's a kitchenette, not a full kitchen, which was in the last year's proposal. Again, something we don't really need a full kitchen in the fire department. So those things all helped us to reduce the cost, and they allow us to have a more efficiently designed station. The other thing that I noticed right away when we looked at this design versus the other one is that there's not a lot of space for hallways in here. The other station design from last year had a lot of space taken up with hallways. It just wasn't efficient. We decided to go with wood frame construction because it's much cheaper than the metal frame construction that was part of last year, and that's where a lot of the savings came in the costs. So let's look at the costs. The total estimated cost is $3.5 million. Now, the select board looked at the estimated cost that we got from a construction company that we set out the plans to get an estimate from, and shaved a few $100,000 off it because they felt we could do better in certain areas. And so we're estimating the cost of $3.5 million, of which we need a bond for $2.5 million because we have roughly $1 million of these things. Spending grand, $500,000 saved over several years in the fire station capital reserve fund, and $150,000 of tax appropriation this year from and $150,000 from fund balance. And then there's a possibility here of affordable housing grant funds expected to act as a buffer in case we have extra costs. Okay. So before we go on, the estimate here is that, as Michael showed on the earlier thing, is that roughly for the first year, roughly $50 per $100,000 valuation for tax bill. And as I pointed out on Facebook this morning, we all paid taxes of $150,000 going to the capital reserve funds last year. So if we do the same thing again, $150,000 is the same bite out of our taxes, and therefore it's no change to the tax bill from last year. And the year after, we go up to $160,000 to service the bond, and that's only a slight increase. So what we're doing is committing ourselves to the same kind of taxes we've had the last couple of years. We're putting money into the capital reserve fund, and we get a fire station out of it. I'm ready to answer questions, and so are those members of the committee. If they can respond as well if they want.
I guess I'll start off. Walter Russia, East Swanzey. First of all, I noticed that anyway, is this the same plan as number 4? Plan number 4.
Oh, you mean the video, the fourth video that we published?
Right.
Yes, it has not been changed. No, it has not been changed. It has not been changed to our language.
So, on here, it's square, over 6,400 square feet.
The footprint is 6,400 square feet. There is some volume because we have an unfinished second floor. So there's some volume on the second floor which is not included in that 6,400.
I have the report from Blue here, and they quote there's a total square footage in that building of 9,458.
That would include the mezzanine area and
Right.
the second story, which we didn't show here.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're okay on that. The next thing I want to point out is this was a memo that you sent out to all board members, advisory board members on Tuesday, December 17th. And it's regarding a fire station cost update. And it states, the first estimate from the folks at DEW came in a bit higher than we like. And the architect and DEW are working to lower the estimate. It's still considerably higher, I mean, lower than last year of 5.2 million, but not nowhere determined as yet to make yet.
I didn't say it's higher, I said low, still considerably lower.
Considerably, yeah, like lower. I think that figure will be presented to the board, but it will be reduced to that. So I am not sharing that first estimate with you and Nina. That's not for the board members, not the board of
The fire
fire
station.
station board. So I asked you, what was that number? What was that original number? It had to be over 4.
I think you're right.
I
I
know.
don't remember the number precisely,
It's
but
like
it wasn't.
4243.
I'm not sure we're supposed to have a dialogue back and forth here, Bob, but
Well, I'm trying to get the answer from you because I've seen a
Bob,
lot of stuff.
one second. We're voting, or the taxpayers are gonna be voting on this number. So if it comes in at 4.2, we don't have that money. We have this number.
This,
This is what the people are
I
gonna vote.
wish you would hear me out because I'm trying to get to establishing a bigger number to go for bond work. So that if you end up short on any of the grants, if you go for 2.5 and it comes over that, what are you gonna do? See what I mean? See, I'm trying to make it clear.
Okay, so bring it up at the deliberative session to change the bond number.
Okay, well, I need to know from Jay what that exact number was from,
I can email it to you, I can go back and look at
okay,
it. However,
that's the only number I need.
However, may I respond to it? Okay. The architect and some of us pushed back a little bit, and they were able to look again at their estimates and revise them because they didn't know a few things. They didn't know a few things that they had included as part of the cost that we didn't need.
Right.
And so there were several things, you know, that they had assumed we wanted more finishing on the second floor, for instance. And they assumed that we wanted something else. I can't remember all the details about it, but the architect and went back to these folks and they came in with that estimate of 3.9, which the selectmen looked at even further,
Right.
and we reduced to what you see.
And that's included, there's 23 change orders in that sheet. So I've counted to get, and there's 23 change orders, and maybe some fees from the architects that have cut out to get down to that 3.96011.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah, it was made, it was a better estimate made. Okay. Now stop here.
Then I'm going to ask where do you get that 460,000 along with that other million?
Oh, okay. So that.
I just want the taxpayers in this town to know, what, you know, from the start, that number, how, and I feel we should start at that number there, and then, you know, if you apply for a bond there and you don't use it all, you're only going to get charged on what you use. But if you go for a small one, and you don't have enough money, what are you going to do? That's
My only hesitation is that we're not supposed to get into a back and forth here. I can explain all this to you. But I would be glad to explain to you if you come to the open house on Saturday night. I would like to explain to you.
I think I have on that.
Hey, Bob, I'll just say that municipal funding, the legislative body, which is the voters, vote for $1. And that's it.
That's right, that's what I'm trying to say.
If you want to suggest that we ask the voters to approve a $10 million bond, and we're going to tell you we can get you in that car for $4.5 million, who's going to buy that?
Well, you should be honest with it, too.
We are being honest. We think that $3.5 million is what this town can
You
afford
think you
for
can't
one
guarantee
fire
that?
station this year.
What I'm saying is you can't guarantee that 2.5.
I can guarantee you that we won't over exceed it, that the bond is gonna be what it is, and if it does come in under, we won't use it all.
That's why I'm saying, whatever that figure is that he has, use that. Simple as that, 4-2.
We tried that the last time we proposed a bond and the people didn't want it. 58% of the people did. 60% was the threshold, so. We listened to the people. We're trying to come in with a more reasonable fire station.
I'll keep my comments.
Thank you.
And anyone who has similar concerns, really, at this open house we have tomorrow, on Saturday, this weekend, and next weekend as well, members of the committee and the fire department will be at station number 2 from 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'll be glad to answer questions. I can go into more detail about that in those sessions as to where we think some savings are here, where the selectmen have identified some savings and so on. It's just not, what we're doing is we're considering this figure tonight, and that's the figure that we're going to be asking the town to fund. And the town won't be spending more than this figure. We'll get it.
Okay, so that's all I ask from you, is send me that email.
I'll send you that email.
That's all I need, please.
I'll also try to explain, if you're not going to be able to be there Saturday, then I'll explain what I know about where the costs come from, for the cost savings. And anybody else in particular who has some feelings like that as well? Yes?
Like that. Steve Russell, Katie Lane, Swanzey. I'm sorry that this building has not been passed for how many years? My concern is to the staff of this town. They've been subjected to those diesel fumes for years, and the potential of them going into retirement and getting cancer is just huge. The reason why I know that is because I spent 12 years running the fleet in Keene, New Hampshire. And in that fleet, I worked with biodiesel to reduce the emissions. And in studying that fuel, I found out there's some pretty nasty stuff coming out of the exhaust of diesel fuel. So two things. I'm hoping you have an exhaust system fuel built into that building. That's really important. It's an injection system where you plug them in. When you take off, they pop out. So I think hopefully that's part of it. And then, you know, and this is a pretty futuristic thing, but I would recommend that you consider putting in this funding right now from the state, a couple of electric vehicle charging stations, because eventually your vehicles will be electric and reduce your emissions. So I would encourage that. There's a $50 million grant program right now that you should consider applying for some infrastructure for that building. Maybe level 2s, maybe 2 or 3 of them. So even if your staff, they come in, and they come in with a lightning truck, pickup truck, they can plug in and get some juice while they're fighting the fire. So a couple of things, but I really support this building. It's time. I think I would have preferred it to be in center Swanzey. You know, it's somewhere there, but there's no way in there. So, but I think this is a great possibility. Now that we scale it back, and it's going to be wood and only one story. That goes a lot. That hopefully folks will understand and go for it.
Thanks for those comments. It is going to be 2 stories in a sense.
No, but you have to change it. No.
And we do have the charging, the
Exhaust
system you're talking about as part of the cost. It's
Great.
built into the cost.
Good.
The charging systems are not, but it is something like they're grants.
Yeah, and I'll work with you on that.
Okay. And we're also looking at potential of solar panels on the roof as an additional grant funding thing.
Yeah, you have to make sure the structure is strong.
It's built to do that. So designed for that. Good. Now, Bruce.
Bruce Caper from Swansea, I guess. So Swansea. How confident are you getting the 200,000 congressionally directed spending grant and the other 500,000 and another, well, 150 is going to come from what we already have. With some of the chatter I've heard coming out of Congress, they're going to be tightening it up. And how confident are we in getting that money so we won't have to raise it some other places?
So the 500,000 is funding that the voters have saved over the last several years, so that's in the account of the trustees and trust funds. The 200,000 is a federal award that we received several years ago now, so it is secure. The only concern is every year we wait, I hold my breath that they're going to say, all right, we're going to give it to someone else because Swanzey doesn't support the project. But as far as the last correspondence, it's still awarded to us. But we did make the language a little bit more general in terms of grant or other aid, because otherwise if we were too specific and we didn't have a $200,000 grant, we could not get the bond. So we made it a little bit more general. We could get some other funds, but right now it is secured.
Thank you.
Okay, so really love to see anybody who wants to come talk to us on Saturday.
Thank you, Jay.
We know the bottom, yeah, we're reading the notice, or you're reading the notice? So again, another long article here that I will not read, won't make you read, but we'll give you the synopsis. This is another bond article. So it's the town is required to appropriate the full sum, which for this one is $6.4 million. It's based on a loan from the New Hampshire Drinking Water Trust Fund, which would purchase and improve by the town the West Swanzey Water Company, which is currently a private water utility in the area around Route 10, the Homestead Bowling Mill. We'll talk a little bit about the area when we get there. So we completed a grant-funded study in 2024 by Underwood Engineers, which was basically assessing the system to understand what it currently consisted of and what it would need if it were to become a town system. This article would have no direct tax impact in 2025, and there's a few articles related to this. We'll talk about it a little bit more. But for a brief introduction, we have Ben Dreyer here from Underwood Engineers.
Thank you, Mike. So as Mike said, we had studied in the last year the West Swanzey Water Company, which maybe some of you are familiar with. It's a private system, a small system, serving about 400 people roughly in West Swanzey. We can do the next slide, please. So the graphic on the right is the service area, and the actual water lines are in blue. So basically, it goes up and down the Route 10 corridor. To the north would be Nick's Restaurant. That's just about reaches that far to the north. To the south, Angie's Pizza. That's about the limits of the system. And then if you can see the purple lines out to the left and right, that's the limits of how far the system could go based on pressure, which is driven by topography.
Just jumping real quick. So it doesn't actually go to those two north and south landmarks, but they are there for reference. And I know this picture's kind of small. The whole report that Ben did is on the town's website under 2025 town meeting information. So I know some of these visuals are tough to see. That whole report is
That's good. Yeah, just try to give you some general landmarks. So basically, the system, it has two active wells. There's a little orange circle in the center. That's off of Perry Lane. So that's currently supplying water. There's a third well that's inactive, but there's plenty of water in the aquifer. It's good quality water, so the supply is excellent. And so basically, also I think you may be aware, at certain times, this idea has come up before of if the town will take this over. The current owners are expressed the potential to sell that, or interest to sell that, possibly. Because of the way the system is operated, currently there's no capital reserve for improvements. And because of the age of the system, which is basically late 1960s, so we're going on 60 years now, there are some needs that are required in the near term. Basically, the high points of that is there's inadequate storage in the system. So that means we're getting to the point where there's not going to be any new service connections that can be provided because of that limited storage. Also, the fire flows are limited. So some of the hydrants don't provide the standard amount of water that the fire truck needs to fight fires. Next slide, please. So here's the photos of the system. The photo on the left is pump house number 1. So inside is the pump for the well number 1. You can see that in the photo on the right. The motor is the gray unit that has a shaft that goes down into the well and brings the water out. On that photo on the right, in the upper right corner, that's the storage tank. It's a 10,000 gallon tank. You can think of it like it's a hydromatic tank like you have maybe if you're on a well in your basement. And that just basically equalizes pressure in the system so it's not kicking on the pumps on and off. So, you can see the generator is the little yellow box in the front of the picture on the left. That does not have an automatic transfer switch, so when you lose power, somebody from the water system has to come out, turn the generator on, so then everybody on the system is going to be able to get water during the power outage. So there's just a number of things like that that don't meet modern standards that need to be addressed. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. So these are some example photos of what would be proposed and a summary of what's needed. So I'll just go quick left to right on these photos. First one is just what a new pump house might look like. Modern construction would be concrete masonry units, some sort of clapboard siding, asphalt type of roof. The photo in the middle would be what it might look like inside. So there'd be new pumps and new piping, and then there would also be a new water storage tank. So we'd have to look at the locations where that would be. It may be steel, it could be concrete, it could be elevated. There's different styles, but that's just to give you a sense of what that is. So the kind of three main components, how we've broken this down, is the purchase of the West Swanzey Water Company. That's estimated about $600,000. Then the new pump house would be $2.5 million. So that's new pumps, new generator, and a new building for both of the wells and the well pumps. And then the storage tank would be $3.3 million. So that would provide the additional storage capacity in the system to allow new connections, and also would provide the fire flows. There's also a 12-inch water main that would, connect the storage tank to the system as well. So we'll talk a little more about the cost and the funding, but I think the message here to keep in mind is that these improvements are needed, period, in the near term. So whether the town were the ones to take this over, or somebody else, or remains as West Swanzey Water Company, these are the improvements in the need and the price tag that the system is facing. Next slide, please. All right, so total project cost, $6.4 million. The town has been working a couple different funding options. The current award is from New Hampshire DES Clean Water SRF. This is a low-interest loan program. In this case, DES is offering 40% principal forgiveness, which for all the different projects and applications that we see, we have never seen 40% principal forgiveness. It's unprecedented funding offer. So they're really kind of giving this project a nudge or a boost. In our meetings with DES, they're telling us you will probably not see this again, especially like not next year. So it's pretty unique in that way. A little bit on the, I guess, the impacts on the system. So with this, or the system users and ratepayers, if this went forward, the typical residential water bill for annual rate would go up about $1,000. So a typical bill right now is maybe in the ballpark of $600. That would become $1,600 for the year. So understanding that that is a significant increase, the town is really working hard to also pursue some other funding sources. So additional grant funding will bring that number down a little bit further. And also, we anticipate a future increase on the overall municipal tax rate of about 5 cents per thousand. That is for the hygiene service fee, which is about 20% of the overall cost. I'll also say in the handouts there's a fact sheet that kind of breaks out some of those numbers a little bit further if you are interested in looking at those closer. Okay, next slide. So basically, two outcomes. What if it passes? What if the article fails? So if it passes, then the town will be able to provide safe drinking water and sustainable rate increases. This is because of the planning and the study that's already been done. The town has a plan on how to do this. It reduces the potential for unplanned impacts to the system and the user. So I guess the concern would be like if a pump went out and it was unplanned because it's on its last legs, now there's a cost to replace that, and could require a sudden increase in the rates. So by planning those improvements, it allows the rates to be increased over a planned period of time. So the costs are managed with the funding opportunities. The town as a municipality probably has one of the better positioned for a number of different types of funding programs. It'll have improved management through transparency and public input. So you come to selecting meetings or to the town for all your other kind of town business. So your water bill would be no different. There's also would allow for commercial development opportunities because now there would be more capacity in the system to allow those additional service connections. And it would be a modern facility meeting the current and future needs of local residents and businesses. This would also expand the town infrastructure and manage natural resources. So the aquifer is an important natural resource that is in the town zone. So what if the articles were to fail? The water system is going to remain vulnerable to equipment failure and aging equipment. It's going to give out at some point. There's potential for unplanned rate increases to address emergency system repairs if that equipment does fail. There's less funding opportunities for a private system than a municipal system. Private control, so it may not be as transparent, and future ownership, if the town doesn't take it over, who is going to take it over? You may not know who that's going to be, may not like who that's going to be, I don't know. Lost opportunity for economic development, so those new connections aren't going to be able to happen until these improvements are done. And then aging facilities are challenged to meet current system demands So there's no additional connections. And as I mentioned on the last slide, you know, the state grant funding would be less if this was to be done in the future, or attempted again in the future. State statutes and RSAs require a 2-year waiting period before the article was brought forward again. So realistically, it would be 2 or 3 more years, and you know, so the prices would be higher, the equipment would be that much older. So those would be kind of some of the challenges if the article were. I think the message here is that, you know, the town is coming with a solution. If it wasn't the town, then who would it be? We don't, not aware of anybody else coming to the table with that sort of idea or funding opportunity. So the cost will be higher and there'll be less control. Next slide.
Yeah, so just as we wrap up on this one, so it authorizes the selection of borrowable funds. And like I mentioned before, there's going to be 2 other articles that sort of relate to this, one more than the other. We're hoping to get the discussion here. So if you have questions about the water company aspect, either about the system currently or about what the town potentially taking over would look like, this would be the time we're going to ask you to give that input. That's the Barbara Scully, so you can start making your way up here. So the other article, which I'll just briefly mention, is Article 12. So the state outlines a process where the voters, by a 2/3 vote, so this is a 60% for the funding authorization, but 2/3 vote by the voters to move forward with the acquisition, and then that, in theory, would give the selectmen time to negotiate. Those discussions have already happened with the water company, or already started. So then, if this passes, we would either have to have a special town meeting to formally ratify the purchase, or at the next annual meeting. So it's like a 2-part process. Barbara shaking her head. Can I answer your question, or?
Barbara Scully. So what we would need, if this passes, we need another meeting to ratify what?
Basically the town operating system. So the borrowing is authorized by this article, but the other article we'll get to later, Article 12, authorizes the selectmen to start the process of acquiring the system. And then the next, that needs to be ratified again. So basically it's not an easy, which it doesn't happen all the time, it's not an easy process, just a one-time vote to take over a water system.
So this warrant Article 5 authorizes the selectmen to raise and appropriate money, which we're anticipating will be from the state revolving fund. If that doesn't come through, does that give the selectmen authority to go elsewhere for this 6.4 million?
No, it's specific to that fund source. If you look at that, again, kind of breezed over the language because there's a lot, but if you look at page 6 of the handout, it's specific to the drinking water state revolving loan fund. It says 40% is forgiveness, so it's locked in. That's specific.
It says additionally to authorize. So, okay, so there's something that doesn't. So, I have a question. I was told by a former sewer commissioner that the existing wastewater treatment plant, while maybe not at full capacity for receiving waste, is at close to capacity for treating waste. So if we're talking about acquiring this water system with part of the idea of future development along Route 10, which means more water going into the wastewater treatment system, how are we going to handle that water if the current wastewater treatment plant is almost near capacity for treatment? And maybe, I don't know if there's someone from Public Works who could better explain that concern.
Joe DeRusso from Public Works. So yeah, they are correct. I'd say we are at capacity for treatment right now, but we are in the middle of a planning study, regardless to deal with the water system. We are working on a planning study to correct some of those issues. Also to be able to meet the requirements of future permits that come down the road, because the permits become more and more challenging, and the current facility is not up to meeting those requirements. So regardless of what takes place with the water, there is planning and a study going on to identify what is going to need to be done at the water treatment plant, at the wastewater treatment plant. So regardless of this, the wastewater treatment plant is going to need upgrades.
Again, Bob DeRocha from East Swanzey. I just want to say that there's a 52-page book here that describes a lot of the work. I support this project very much because it's going to help out with future development on Route 10 and commercial development. But I don't think we should rush into it this year. We're dealing with the fire department issue this year. I think we should wait till next year. I would like to see a letter from DES that when our actual time now, if we can extend it, if you know what I mean, inquire with the water supply bureau there and tell them that we need another year for a proper plan. And that's basically what it gets down to, proper planning. We need to have some study groups or workshop groups, whatever. In the evenings, a lot of the older folks don't like to travel out. We should have some of those in the afternoon when a lot of the others here are working. So I think we need to have a couple sessions and maybe one on a Saturday. I would like to see everybody, it's going to affect one part of town, but the whole town is going to pay for this. So I think we'd all like to know, what's involved here and to understand it so that we can, as the people that come to the meetings, can leave with a positive note and know what's going to happen so that they can tell their neighbors. I would like to see this passed by 70% if we do it right. I spoke my piece.
So I think the main thing I'd like to clarify is this would be a general obligation of the town. The whole town would need to approve the borrowing, but the intent is that it would be the statute for RSA 38, which is the other article we'll talk about, is very clear that those expenses need to be separated from the town's general fund and can't be commingled, so there will be like a cost for the hydrants like Ben mentioned, but in general, it's not something that the whole town.
Okay, so this is the first time I've heard it. This is Joe Kieran from Swanzey. I just want to make sure I understand. What you're saying is the town votes on it, but the town only pays 5 cents on the tax rate. The people that are really paying for this are the $1,000 that are using it, right?
Correct.
Is that my understanding correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand, right? It's really the people using it that are going to pay for it. And that's kind of a weird way to vote. Basically, I'm voting to pay for somebody to pay more money. That's a weird thing. Well, in the past,
I live in East Swanzey,
Bob, in the past, we had the TIF district over at Safford Drive. The town voted for it. But the TIF district, the development of it is being paid by the properties on Safford Drive. So, I mean, it could happen in your neighborhood. Yeah, I understand. It's an interesting way to look at it, right? I mean, if I'm sitting there, affected by this is a big deal. Me, right now, it's not, right? That's a weird thing.
Yeah, just what, so Ben mentioned it in his presentation, but just to reiterate, it's one of the other points Mr. Brocher brought up was waiting a year, which ideally, sure, if we do it here when there's nothing else on the plan, not sure when that'll be. We've been waiting for the fire station to get resolved since I've worked here for 10 years, so. But that funding will not be available. We cannot go for this. If these two articles fail, we can't bring it back next year. So it's not necessarily a one-time shot, but you can't guarantee that we'll have those funds the next time. So go with Mr. Faulkner since he hasn't spoken at all yet.
Just a question about the infrastructure that's in place. That studied, I mean, what are the names, do they meet current codes? I know there's a thing about piping that's an issue. What's in the ground now and what does it how does it stand with the current codes for water distribution?
The study primarily looked at the pumps and the supply. We did an inventory, so there's like 7,000 approximately linear feet of pipe, cast iron, ductile iron, and asbestos cement. So that's in the report. So we didn't identify that there was a need to replace any of the piping. Piping generally lasts longer than some of the pump stuff does. And some of it's newer. So the piping was built to service, or the water system started to serve Woolen Mills, and then later was expanded and became, residential service. So some of that piping is relatively newer. The study we did some asset management, so that we're projecting out further. So say, identifying in 10, 20-year chunks areas of water need to be replaced. That's built into the rate structure. So there would be time to build capital reserves to address that part of the system. So the focus was really on getting the pump and the wells and the water storage tank, so it's turnkey. So in general, the piping is in acceptable condition. There is a study being done on the lead services, of course. You mentioned about the copper services. So we're not doing that, but that is being addressed. There's funding for that. That's a separate effort.
I'm just looking at it as long-term costs to the town. It's not the $6.4 million now, it's the perpetual maintenance and what has to be upgraded to meet current standards.
So
to take this over, do we want it?
Right. So the 6.4 is what's it, to make it turnkey, and in addition that it would be reasonable to accept it. It would be a good idea for the town to take it on. And then it's the rates that the users are paying when they turn their faucet on to pay for that water, is building capital reserves for future improvements like replacing pipe later on down the road. So that was part of it.
Okay, so do we have to meet current standard? If the town takes this over and you're changing ownership, does the town have to meet current standards, or can it be operated in the condition it's in other than pumps, tanks, etc.? I mean, I'm looking at what has to be, there's nothing grandfathered anymore as far as I know.
The conclusion of the report and the study was that it wouldn't be advisable for the town to take it over in its current condition, as far as the aging pumps and all of this. Because this, it has to be done. This needs to be done. And so why would they take on a headache of a system that is like on its last legs? So that's why the 6.4 million is to make it turnkey, so it's in a condition that's ready for the town to then operate it. And
I think he's asking, are there other things that would need to be done immediately?
For us to run it, us being the town of Swanzey, to run this system, at change of ownership, is the state going to say, now wait a minute, you've got copper services to all of these things, we need to get the copper count down, so we want them changed to plastic. We've got AC in there, I'm sure there's ductile, I'm sure there's, but I'm sure there's AC in there too.
All the other water systems in the state have those too. So they're not, there's no mandate, or those are not, the piping does not need to be updated. Or there's, until it just.
I think the question is, right,
It was obviously either poorly run as a private company, or it's not a viable institution. He's asking, is it viable for the town to run it? Are we gonna make enough money to update it, maintain it as we go? That's the question that I would like answered.
And that's,
Is it a viable company?
yes, and that was the focus in the outcome of the report. That was the question that our report was wanting to answer. And so yes, that is the conclusion that we came to. It's not
running it by a town has advantages. We've got a cheap source of capital, right? So with that cheap source of capital, with the rates, is it viable to maintain it, grow it? I mean, I'd like to see all of Swansea have town water. The question is this a viable business? I'm asking you, you guys have done the work. Is this a viable business?
I think the difference between a public utilities corporation or committee, whatever it is, PUC controlled business, which is a private business.
And they're taking their profits out and not reinvesting.
Nope.
That's poorly run. The question is, can we do that?
It's not poorly run. The only way to do improvements to a PUC controlled private business utility is to fund it. You go out and you borrow the money and you do it.
Or you make profits and you reinvest those, right? It's like you're running like any business.
They don't allow you to do that. They don't allow you to do capital reserves. You can't raise the rate to put money away for the future. They won't let a business do that. They'll let a municipality. That's one of the crazy things PUC does. You have to have venture capital, you have to go out. You know, if Brown Water wanted to do it, West Swansea Water, they go out, they put $6 million into it. Then the PUC looks at the numbers and says you can charge people $1,000 more a year. So that's how a private business would have to do it. Municipal can put away money for a rainy day and build equity that way.
So as the town leaders, that's what we're planning, I'm assuming.
Yes, ma'am.
Kristen?
Mr. Meadows, West Swansea. What does PUC stand for?
Public Utilities Commission.
Okay. So if we put in that money, the $6 million into this, could they say, well, we don't need to sell it anymore?
They won't do us.
We will have bought.
We're municipal, so we would deal with the Department of Environmental Services and DRA.
When we're voting on this, what we're voting on is whether or not we want to buy it and do the improvements.
Correct. Like Ben said, that's the only way to do it. If we just bought it without the improvements, it's not viable. The report says you shouldn't do it.
Okay. So it's a combination of those two things.
Barbara?
An increase of $1,000 a year seems pretty hefty, and I'm just curious if the current water users are aware of this or were involved in all of this discussion, how they feel about it. And was that an annual increase? I mean, is it going to be $1,000 more for a number of years for them?
So that's where we'll ultimately get to. So how the loan works is we don't start paying it back until all of the improvements are done. So it's going to be a several-year process. And in the meantime, we can start raising the rates more incrementally, start building some capital in it. So that's if we just start immediately, it would have to go up that amount. It's not necessarily what it's going to end up increasing to. And it's going to be several years down the road.
I assume that the alternative is to drill your own well and your own septic. So that's much more than $1,000 a year.
We can see the rates and the margins.
And Ben, with the $1,000 increase they put out there, would that be the flat fee, the volume rate, and the tax? So like a district tax, or how do you kind of come to that?
It's based on water, it's based on consumption, on your water, whatever your water consumption is. So we use the state average, you can go to the dashboard. So what a typical home would use times, what the water rate that's needed to fund, the debt service on the improvements, plus operating expenses, and all that's already built into the existing rate. So it's the increases for the improvements. So does that answer
tax involved also, the TIF tax.
No, because, so the precinct, like, settlers from the North Swanzey Water and Fire Precinct, they have an additional tax because this would be part of the town. You cannot have a separate additional tax, so just the user.
It is worth noting too, though, that, you know, it's like, more users will bring rates down if they're selling more water. So it's like right now, it's a little bit of a catch-22, but if you can't put more connections on, you know, and then there's some sort of failure that requires repair, and now you have a rate, you also, it's only on the users that are on there now. If you make this investment, and then more people can connect and start running the system with better planning and management, you know, the rates, that'll get spread out over time, so it's not as big of a burden on a smaller user base.
So the most important thing about this whole thing is Route 10. It's Route 10 is where we're going to grow.
Yeah.
And to put businesses or anything on Route 10, the main thing we're going to need is water and the correct pressure. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So that's what we need, the storage tank. So basically, if we don't do this, we're kind of holding back Route 10 on bringing in some nice business that will help us in taxes in the future and all this. I feel that, you know, it's got to happen in one way or another to grow Route 10 and these surrounding areas. And when you talk about the rates, when you add these businesses on, they'll help out the rates. Am I correct?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Kevin Vanderwood, West Swansea. I just have a question on the loan forgiveness aspect of the deal. One, are all three projects, acquisition, pump house, tank, subject to that loan forgiveness? And two, if you could very briefly speak to the impact of how that works. For example, if it's a 25-year loan, do you stop paying when you've reached $3.8 million in payoff, 13, 14, 15, 16 years into that loan? That's just an example.
Right. So your first question, sorry, I was cataloging, the answer was yes.
Yeah, it was yes, that all components are factored in.
Yeah, so that's the 6.4 million, is those three components, and that would be the loan amount, would be for 6.4. And then they take the 40% off, so you're paying back interest on the remaining 60, and the loan works like a construction loan. So everything we budgeted, it would be a 30-year loan, just over 3% are the numbers that we're using, and then you know, it can be amortized like your mortgage payment is, or the numbers that we ran are level payments. So as you pay level principal, and then the interest payments decrease over the course of a couple ways that they allow you to do that.
So it sounds like it would still be for the full term of the loan. You don't just stop paying partway in because you reach a dollar number. The total capital owed will be reduced at the time.
Yeah, so they adjust the principal.
Got it.
This one's for you. There was also included in this West Swansea water thing, $2.5 million to run a pipe up Route 10. From West Street up to North Winchester Street. Has that been?
So that's kind of the third article that's kind of related to this, is the TIF district. So that would be funded out of the, and if that were to happen, that would be through the TIF district.
That will, okay.
Talk about later, but that's not included in this.
Okay, I just wondered where it went.
A few years ago, we ran into problems with, I think it was whatever that dollar store is there now, that they couldn't open their business because we didn't have enough water supply going out to that end. They ended up putting, I don't know what they put it, maybe slide hose. But they had to increase their investment in a inadequate water system in order for them to run a business. So if you don't have the, it does no good to have the well just sitting there watering the field where you really need the volume if you want to see the growth. And I think it both should go together, is what I get at. So I know it's a lot of money, but there should be some plans in place and learn what it's going to, so many feet of pipe per year we're going to put in for this amount of money. And, because, we're still, if you look out the window, we've got a wonderful mill that's still sitting here. It's my understanding that places that wanted to go in there, but they didn't have adequate water supply. So, we're in the catch-22 situation here. So, some ideas on that, if you can.
That's why we need the storage, we need the pressure, we need all that. Basically it does, it's useless, it is useless. You're basically right.
Did you have a question?
I'll wait until we get to 12.
Or 11 specific to, we're gonna look at what that goes. So if it's specific to water lines or anything, we'd rather just, not about that.
We're good, we can then leave.
Actually, yes.
Yes, Richard Way, Eaton Road. This is my second time to one of these meetings, and I'm concerned for the voter. They just went through a reassessment. They saw the values of the homes change. They saw the taxes change. Some went up quite a bit, some maybe not as much. We need to look at what does the town really need, and what can we afford, and what can we pass. Now, the fire station, I think, is number one. The water system, I think, is nice, but I'm afraid we're going to scare the voter, so he's going to just say, well, I don't want any of this, and you're not going to get anything. So I don't know if you've reached out to the voters individually to have a discussion as to what do you want, and if you haven't, your presentation is nice, but we need one more. If you do all of this, this is what will happen to your taxes all together, not individual, but all together. That's one comment. I don't know what the selectmen have done.
I think Mike does a real good job putting together the voter guide for us, and I believe they'll put in dollar figures, or if you vote for this is what's going to happen to your $1,000 rate, your $200,000 house.
Will you send this out to the populace before it's time to go and vote?
Yeah.
We'll discuss it a little bit later tonight as well, so but tell us if you think we can do better.
Because it's a slippery slope right now.
Last call for water line system questions. All right, we'll go on to the next one, which is still for Ben, so he's actually not meeting yet, but we'll soon. So this is another one, again, I won't read it. It looks like it is authorities to borrow funds, but it's really effectively a grant because it's what the state calls principal forgiveness. Again, it's similar to the portion of the other article, except this is for the full amount. So we'll jump to the next one, John. Yes, it's a stormwater capital improvement plan through the loan, but with principal forgiveness, so there's expected to be no direct tax rate impact in 2025. Because you have to borrow the funds, and then they forgive it, there might be like, I don't want to throw a comically small number, but a very small number amount of interest. but the cost is going to be really negligible. And then we go to the next one, Josh, which is last story.
You got a question, Mike?
Yeah, as you know, I'm all for stormwater management, but I'm just curious. I mean, $100,000 doesn't sound like much for stormwater management. I'm just curious what this is supposed to cover.
All right, yeah, so we can jump right into that. So the $100,000 basically is to fund a report, a comprehensive stormwater improvement plan. Basically, the town has stormwater infrastructure all over in various conditions. Much of it's accounted for. The condition may not be totally understood in every location, and then in some cases maybe it's also connected or associated with other infrastructure. So the idea of and also connected to then resources as well. So the idea of the plan is to look at that all together and be able to make informed decisions about infrastructure that's improved or prioritizing which improvements kind of from a holistic approach. So, I mean, for example, there was a lot of flooding here last summer, and so we have roads or we have culverts that need to be replaced, but if we're thinking then about which ones have flooding history, and we also are thinking about what are the downstream impacts, one over the other. So this would kind of go complementary with like the road CIP plan as well. So that we're replacing infrastructure once and not having to come back to it, and that it is also using funds efficiently, and so it's a framework and decision-making tool.
Doesn't it benefit us in other ways as far as getting grants?
That's right, yeah. So that's the other piece is that, down the road, once the projects are kind of identified and once the priorities are known, having that report gives you a leg up on the funding opportunities that will come out because it's documented, it's supported, there's a basis for the need. So that primarily is through the Clean Water SRF. The town's doing some of those currently now, so that would be for the future. But there's other programs as well where that would become a useful tool.
Yeah, I was thinking, I think we've been awarded close to $1 million over the last few years, including California Street, some of that funding is through this program, so that's in my mind one of the big selling points, additional grant opportunities. Kind of complement when we do a road project, how we get some money from the state to help fund stormwater.
Which, in the DS funds have become competitive, more competitive, so they have a scoring matrix, and so to hit, all the points on the scoring matrix, having a report like this would allow you to score well.
So this report will cover water quality as well as quantity.
Yep, and it kind of inventory resources, it would be town-wide, so yes.
All right, this is really the last year's aspect.
Yes.
So, kind of into our normal, kind of regularly scheduled articles, so the those last couple were not usual, but, so Article 7 is the town operating budget, so you can see the numbers there, so we're looking at a total budget for 2025 of $8.7 million. Default budget, so that part will get loaded down. Default budget is $7,935 change. So again, kind of just that summary. Increase over 2024 of 9.3%. We'll talk about some of those factors, what's contributing to that. And then the default budget is actually a little bit lower than last year. We have one election in 2025 instead of four in debt service gets paid off. So some of the major increases, personnel administration, no doubt you've probably heard it's not easy to hire people, the cost of hiring people is increased. So that's both wages and then associated costs, retirement contributions, similar things. Insurance, health insurance continues to increase. Workers' comp, liability, all of our insurance is increasing. Police department, that's a department where we had to make some larger than other departments, market-based adjustments. Fire department increases primarily associated with part-time positions, part-time payroll, instead of adding additional full-time positions. There's no additional full-time positions in the fire department. Public Works, they are adding additional heavy equipment operator as we continue to do more projects and have to meet some of those disasters of the picture we showed earlier. Also, winter operations are obviously important, so adding a position there. General assistance, Representative Rhodes, if you were here before the hearing started, talked a little bit about that, but it's really been a struggle for Swanzey to continue to house folks. There's not a lot of rental apartments, rental locations, the costs are increasing. And then the recreation department is adding an additional part-time assistant director position. So again, I mentioned the election briefly, so that's a line item that's decreasing. And then we have a budget for our friend and his group to film these meetings. Fortunately, that's pretty reasonably cost effective, so we're able to reduce that budget. So again, this is just a summary. Revenues are increasing slightly, but not unfortunately as much as the overall budget increase. So that's the tax rate impact of just the budget only. Again, we'll get to the end, we'll talk about if everything passes. But that, jump to the chart, back one Josh. So that's a breakdown. You can probably see it better in the handout. Hopefully, if not, we'll put it on. So it just kind of shows you the puzzle pieces of the police department, 17% for that one down here. I believe the fire department is the green one that's cut off next to it. Got a large one on the bottom left, highways and streets. So it just gives you a sense of that total town tax bill. 27% of your total tax bill, how that gets broken up between the different departments. Next one, so that's just a chart. We do have the full detail. I think it's 32 pages. And wants to go through line by line, we'll have that as the delivery session as well. And that's the revenue piece, largely consistent. Property taxes have traditionally been about half the budget, cover about half the expenses. The other big revenue is motor vehicle registration, so that's the green puzzle at the bottom line. And that's the revenue summary year over year. Any questions or feedback on the budget before we start? Mr. Cobb.
Good evening, Dan Cobb from Swanzey. General opinion on the 9+% increase. I don't feel like we're going to get passed. We're asking for a big capital. We're asking for a 9+% increase on our general, the other big numbers, so to speak. The school district's asking for something like a 3%, 4%, plus a teacher's contract of 5.5%, 5+% in the first year. We ain't gonna get everything. And so just by way of forecast, since this is a hearing, I'm not asking questions, I'm just delivering. I think that's what we're doing. I'm delivering a forecast for February 4th, that I will make a motion to change that number to be more in line with something, a 1.4% increase. Where you get it from is not up to me, of course, that's up to your team. But I think that we have a better chance of having at least some improvement versus the default budget, which I think you and we all need that. Whether I can or want to pay for it or not, I don't think we'll get it. I think this will set us up. Lord willing, we'll get a fire station, but we'll get a default budget. And then you'll be suffering for some things that we need or want to do
or whether it's improving pay or hiring people or putting new programs in place. So I really think some things that are over 4% is a tripwire for certain people, especially for younger families. And so that's a forecast for what I'll be delivering on Wednesday the 4th as a suggestion for delivery volume. Thanks for listening.
Seeing no other questions, just the merits response, but I don't think we put forward this request lightly, and we certainly would like it to be less.
I agree, Mike. I don't doubt you.
Fully mature, I'll get to that, so. With that, we'll jump forward to the next article. So the next couple articles are related. So we have two articles that are funding our capital reserve and expendable trust funds. So this gives you the breakdown of what's going into each different fund. So unlike the budget, which is a lump sum, as Mr. Coffey mentioned, these other articles, there's specific amounts associated with specific things. So if this says fire truck 30,000, if it passes, the selectmen can't decide, oh, we want to put in 100,000 for fire trucks. Those line items are binding. So the next one. First is two, part of the 6-year plan developed annually by the Capital Improvement Plan Committee. Some of the major changes top two are reductions. So Mount Caesar Union Library had a increase last year as part of their renovation project. With at least one phase of that completed, they're looking for about 50,000 less than last year. Another item that's decreasing is the contribution to the Goldenrod Grange-Hall project. So that's intended as matching funds to help fund the foundation work at that building, so it'll be hopefully matching grants. Whitcomb Hall, after this lovely project was completed a few years ago, we thought we were done, and now, of course, it's needing maintenance. So we got quotes for painting last year, which were crazy. So we needed some additional funds to make sure the exterior is painted before it gets to be in worse shape. And recycling center, kind of similar to Whitcomb Hall, we did the big upgrade. I'm sure everyone who goes there knows, but now some of those kind of routine maintenance items are cropping back up. So we're going to start funding that article as well.
On the capital reserve fund, do you have a slide that shows what they know now?
I don't have a slide, but you have it in your hand. So this is the last page. So that shows over the last 5 years what's been going into the funds, and then this last column, estimated balance, is estimated as of the 4/15 finance director that is up-to-date numbers. So that shows the balances in those funds. Any other questions on this article? Jump on to the next one. So the next one is the same idea, except it's road and infrastructure related articles, or capital reserve funds. So it's highway equipment, bridges, sidewalks, facilities, road reconstruction, and rail trails. So pretty similar to last year, up $10,000. I think that's mainly because sidewalks are having a different fund before. Cover bridges, that amount is both associated to camera projects that we've been working on the last couple of years. So we did cameras at the Crescent Bridge, we're looking to do the other ones. And painting is expensive, decking is expensive, so they're pretty high maintenance items. Town dams with us completing Upper Wilson Pond Dam. We do have one more dam to do, Swanzey Lake Dam. We have some seed money to fund engineering, so we're taking a year off on that. Any questions on the public works capital stuff? Seeing none. Article 10. So this is our kind of fire station contingency plan article. So Article 4, which is the bond fails, this article will save $300,000 towards the project. So as Mr. Ward mentioned, the impact of this passing with fire station passing are basically the same. So you can save up $300,000 a year for 10, 15, 20 years, or you want to improve the bond. Last couple of years, you said you want to save for it. So last year, based on amendments at deliberative session, we only put away 200,000, so it's 300 and then 200. So we have 500 up in there now. I'll jump to the next one. And it's half funded by taxation and half from the fund balance, which would be don't spend the whole budget or we overcollect revenues, it goes towards the fund balance, and we can put it towards items like this or lowering the tax rate. We did both of those last year. If this passes and the other one passes, they don't both go into effect with our form of government. You can have what they call a contingent article, so they don't have to both pass. Questions? This is the one Mr. Faulkner alluded to earlier, so again, I'm not going to read that, a lot of kind of required language, but the long story short is this year we have a West Swanzey TIF District Advisory Committee, so TIF is TIF, it stands for Tax Increment Financing, and that was a committee of a lot of people in this room actually, same Scott, Vice Chairman. So they reviewed the area again, similar to the water company, but not fully the same. So they're looking at capital needs in that area of Route 10 between North Winchester, South Winchester Street, and trying to identify areas that could have commercial development and what the town could do without burdening the taxpayers to help kind of foster that development. So Swanzey has one tax increment financing district now, which is Safford Drive area. It's called Swanzey Revenue Development District. And that's how Safford Drive was built, more nanotech. Flatley Housing Project is going to be in the TIF district. So basically the town borrowed funds to build that road and the new development will help pay it off. So that district is about ready to be completed, and we're kind of looking at the next phase, which we see in this area of Route 10 as the next opportunity. So the primary public functions that we funded are water line extensions, which is what Mr. Faulkner mentioned, potential sewer extensions and or sewer treatment upgrades. So even if the water system doesn't move forward, but this article gets approved, if new development comes in that area, it can go to help pay towards the sewer needs. If the water system gets approved, it can go towards extending the water lines to some of those commercial properties that don't currently have it. So no direct tax impact. It's not appropriating any money. What this article does is it basically freezes the values around that area, and any increases can go into a savings account to pay towards these improvements. So they don't pay any more taxes if you're in the district. It just goes towards these projects. If we end up not doing any projects, the money will eventually just go back into the general fund.
Is it basically set aside as a separate entity then, so any increase in valuation from whenever this passes?
April 1st, 2025.
Yeah, so any increase in valuation, that amount of money, the taxes garnered from that amount goes into a separate entity.
Separate account.
It's separate account, okay. And so is used only for improvements in that district, whatever they be.
Whatever they be outlined in the financing plan, so there's I think a over 13-page development and financing plan, which is on the website, or is available at Town Hall.
Okay.
So we can't decide, okay, we want to build a fire station, because that's not in the development plan. It's only specific water and sewer infrastructure is all that's in there now. Could be amended later if we decide, okay, the water didn't happen, we want to use it for something else in the district. The body can amend it.
Okay, so it's not reliant, the water company and this TIF district are not relying on each other then?
Correct. Either could happen or not.
Okay.
It's new places too, new projects. Correct. Not just increase, it's anything new in the future. Company comes in, moves in on some of the property, all that. I'd like to add something to
He hasn't talked yet, Barbara, so it's too late.
It's indirectly relying on one another because the purchase of the water company that being upgraded allows water service to go out Route 10 to the properties that we need to develop. Yeah, I could do that with that. They kind of go on. They go from. But Scott said.
Perfect.
I couldn't locate a map that shows the boundaries of the TIF district. Can you, it includes, is it just Route 10, or does it actually include part of North and South Winchester Street?
Second part, north and south Winchester Street, that is okay.
So what's currently residential will be included in the TIF district?
Correct, because it has to be contiguous, so we couldn't just pick out spots here or there. If I can stretch that away, we can stretch his legs.
So that's changing the neighborhood.
It doesn't, how so?
Well, because isn't the TIF district to develop, so how does this work with our current zoning then? I mean, does that change the uses?
There's nothing to do with that.
Oh, it doesn't?
The zoning stays the same.
So what's residential stays residential, it doesn't mean that we're going to be asking for development on Winchester Street?
It's not an industrial park, it's a tax increment fund.
That won't change the zoning at all. All the zoning stays exactly as it is unless the town changes zoning at town meeting.
Yeah.
But all that zoning changes there. It's just that those properties are included in that district, and any evaluation above that baseline of that date, even though it's residential or commercial, will go towards the TIF district for infrastructure in the district. But again, the zoning stays the same.
So if I have a house on North Winchester Street and I'm paying taxes now to the general, town budget, instead my taxes will go to the TIF district?
Your baseline goes to the general fund, and the improvements to it after that date, say you're paying $500 more taxes after that date, that portion would go into the TIF district. The rest of the baseline, whatever you're paying, goes to the general fund.
It only comes when they reassess it. So if your house is reassessed at $500,000, you can reassess it at $600 some later date. That extra $100,000 that you're being taxed on goes there. The $500 still stays to the town. It's just when they reassess.
Or if you built a new house, even though it's not commercial, the new house would pay towards the TIF district. But it doesn't, the taxes are no different to the people in it, it's just where it goes versus.
You're just siphoning off some of the
Yeah, so some of the money, instead of going to the town, just goes to this district, which would support improvements for the development on Route 10.
And your house on North Winchester might benefit from improved water and sewage. So you're getting some benefit from it too. It's not just for industry or business.
So if the development required improvements in the wastewater treatment plant, so as a resident on Winchester Street, I would be benefiting from that. But as a resident on Spring Street, that improvement, I mean, I had nothing to do with the need for that increase in the water treatment plant. So who pays for that increase? The TIF district or all the water users? I mean, all the wastewater users?
Well, I don't know if are there any wastewater people outside of the proposed TIF district? Or
Yes.
encompass the whole thing?
Yes.
I know, yes, the lagoons are in the TIF district, I don't think every property.
So the user would pay, but the people in the TIF district, just the portion of the increase in value, they're not going to pay any more. It's just instead of going to the regular Swanzey tax, a little piece of it's going to go to the TIF.
But
To pay back some of the improvements.
so we're talking sewer treatment though, and there's an increase in development on Route 10, which increases water use, which means we need to increase our wastewater treatment capability. I, on Spring Street, might end up paying more for my wastewater treatment than I currently am because of the increased use from Route 10.
But what Joe, I think, said was, even without the TIF district, we're gonna have to make improvements in the sewer plant.
Well,
So-
that's what the report we're trying to find out. But so I guess.
So you could either pay for it all yourself, or the TIF district could develop and help soften the blow and pay hopefully the majority of it.
Well, what I'm hearing is that currently the wastewater treatment plant is handling what it needs to handle at this point in time. It's increases in that are going to be causing an increase in the size or the need for treatment. So right now, if it stayed as it is, there would be no need to increase the capacity of the wastewater treatment.
Next year, the EPA could say we have to do a major improvement.
So he's correct there. So right now, the plant is managing what is coming in for flows and treatment. There's more capacity in the plant, but unfortunately, where the system is being operated right now, they cannot treat any more than what's coming in. But the EPA continually changes the permitting, and we continually get warned by DES that there's a strong likelihood that we won't be able to meet the requirements of the next permit mandate. So sooner or later, regardless of this water system, the plant is going to need some upgrades. The question is going to be how much, and that's what that planning study, we received a grant, the planning study being done by a grant, that's going to be able to identify more of that. But they're making it so more and more stuff has to be tested for and meet certain requirements. Those requirements are becoming more difficult and difficult to meet.
So while Joe was distracting you, I got the map pulled up. So up in the kind of northwest part is a viewpoint for kind of reference. This area over here in the kind of top right is the intersection with North Winchester Street, comes down Route 10, ending in the area of Evergreen Level. You know, past Evergreen Level, in the area just before Pine Grove. So this is the lagoons right here over on the right side. Perry Lane is over here on the west side, so it kind of goes up. We wanted to include Viewpoint for two reasons. One, that's a possible location for the storage tank of the system if we end up putting the Swanzey Water Company have the storage tank up there. So they'd be a user store system. And but also similar could end up around here. So it's to try to give us some options in terms of where to put different facilities. And then over here is the Homestead Boulevard, which was discussed before. It's not necessarily all. I think there's, like you were mentioning, Barbara, there's some sewer users over on this east side of the river, so they're not included in the proposed TIF district. And these districts can only be so big, both in terms of acreage and assessed value. So you can't have the whole town be a TIF district.
Bob?
I have a question for Joe. What are you leaning towards, putting in another lagoon or?
No, I'm not leaning towards anything. That's what the planning studies, the engineers are looking at it and seeing they're seeing what they can do about correcting some of the treatment issues so we can make an improvement on the flows there. And then they were taking a look at all the infrastructure to see what will be upgraded, what will need to be upgraded.
I mean, but for looking for additional flow, another lagoon or?
That's what they're looking at.
Or a force main up to the Keene plant.
They're looking at that. That's one of the considerations as well is would it be more cost effective with the flows we own out of the Keene facility running a sewer main to connect West Swanzey to North Swanzey and into Keene's flows. They're looking at all of that.
Any kind of fallback on that, what that would be? Any kind of fallback on that? Is that
No.
gonna be-
No, I wouldn't want to speak to that. A lot to it.
Okay.
Bruce?
Everything we're supposed to have on board.
I know, I was hoping you were going to jump in.
No. No, I'm going to go.
I was just going to say, Scott, former many-year operator of the plant, you told me you thought another lagoon was unlikely, right? It's more likely to have the treatment in it.
Yeah, it'd be pretty much likely that they wouldn't put in another lagoon there because they're inefficient as far as the size of the area that it takes up there. They'd probably put in more of a mechanical process down there to treat treat. The flow coming in, they can treat a lot more on a smaller area than a process like, for instance, the city of Keene does. So probably going to be like that, but it's at flow, it's at loading capacity, what they call loading capacity, but not design capacity. And that's the difference there. And Joe was talking about the permits that the state is bringing on to us in all the smaller areas there, the treatment plants, and that phosphorus was the first one, which pretty much lowered the capacity of our system like that, because it's treating for phosphorus. And they're going to have other things coming in there, maybe copper, maybe other metals, we don't know what, but it's going to take a lot down there to straighten it out. Regardless of the tip or anything else going in there, we're going to get it back.
All right, seeing no other questions on that, we will move on to the next article. We are getting close to being done. Oh, Chris is leaving. Oh, did you want to speak? Yes, Chris?
No, I don't have any done. Just say goodnight. Have a great night.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
So this is the other article I teased earlier. So this is the second part, so the West Swanzey Water Company acquisition. So if the other article passes and this one fails, it does not move forward. If this one passes and the other one fails, we could still reconsider the funding piece at the next opportunity. So these two are definitely tied together, and ultimately will bring to pass eventually. So that was the other piece that we alluded to earlier about if this fails, it will not be brought back again for 2 years. So there's not a track next year opportunity. And again, to reiterate, expenses for the water system, they have to be, it's not an option, they have to be accounted for separately from other town expenses paid by users. Chris Schilling is stuck around. So Article 13 is appropriating $100,000. That's why you left. Was the so $100,000 towards the ambulance expendable trust fund, which we created last year. So we currently have a contract with Cheshire EMS run through Cheshire County. It goes for another year and a half, goes through June 30th, 2026. The current rates are significantly subsidized. They're shown here. He met with the select board a month or so ago, and warned us, which was not a big surprise, but warned us that when that contract ends, we're looking at significantly more money. So to start to prepare for that, we started the fund last year. We're now putting more into it. Now we see what those dollars are going to cost. So this is really just to try to smooth the transition into higher costs. So this one will be quick. So this is readopting a tax exemption that the town has had now for 5 years for commercial and industrial properties. So it gives the selectmen the ability, if there's a public benefit, to waive a portion of the taxes for new commercial and industrial. So it's kind of like the assessment card. So it's kind of gives the selectmen a tool in their toolbox to say, developer approaches the town, they really like to locate here, but they need some incentives. The town, that gives us some flexibility. New Hampshire here, but in the Midwest, places give free taxes to businesses that they move. We don't have huge tools like that, which I think overall is okay. But this does give us one tool to use to try to do economic development. And we've approved, we've approved only 2 of those so far, so it's not like we're giving away millions of dollars and 2 million applications, but yes.
How long, it says for 5 years here, is that as long as the tax exemption for individual businesses? Or is that the duration of this article?
The second one. It's the duration of each 5 years, it has to be reauthorized.
Okay.
The exemption can be up to 10 years.
The exemption can be up to 10 years at a set percent?
Yeah, up to, we had that in there, we took it out because it was even longer, believe it or not. Yeah, I believe it's up to 50%. Up to 50%.
Up to 50% for a maximum of 10 years and then taxes would be based on full valuation after that.
Correct.
Yeah, we did go with that. Field house, that one.
Yeah, the two were approved, the Homestead Bowling Mill and then Frog Brewery. The two were in platforms.
Those are the fire.
So we're into the petition articles. This was the first petition article. Are you in favor of increasing the board of selectmen to 5 members? So we currently have 3. And this wording of this article is required by the statute, so it cannot be amended at the deliberative section. So if you get a petition trying to increase it, this is what it's going to be. Not really delineated. Okay, the next one is also a petition article, so we'll be adding a second polling place for voting here at Richmond Hall. Seeks to appropriate 15. Yes.
Just a second.
No, I believe it will be specific. So,
Sure, that's what they want.
so appropriate $15,000 for costs of what kind of machines programs. Off the press is the stack table. When the town clerk had asked her to I asked her to do this. My voice is full.
I asked him to bring up the volume a little.
Ran out of water, then took it.
Okay, so 2 of the voting machines and ballot boxes, $12,600. The annual service on the 2 machines is $750. Programming per election, which I think they could do all 4, right? The 4 machines, it says quantity 1,500, so that's either 500 or 2,000. The voting booths are $13,721 for 10 of them. Supplies, $500, probably an annual fee. And food for the election workers is about $300, and election salaries are about $750 now. So if we double it, I don't think the $15,000 would do it, especially in 4 years when we have 4 elections. But next year would be the first year, and that would be 3 elections. A primary, a state election, and the annual town election.
It got cut off here, the impact is 1 cent per house. It's cut off, but it's 1 cent per house.
Michael, Heather's on her way, if anybody has questions for her.
She said Heather's on her way.
Oh. Any questions on that one? Seeing none.
Summary of all of them. So where we have the petition article and some non-money articles, this information is based on just the select board recommended articles. Things get amended at deliberative, that can change and has changed in past years. So kind of the impact of $300,000 house, everything were to pass, it would increase in 2024, $156. Next step, where you get to all the legislators, is deliberative session, so everyone can make amendments, discussion, vote on articles. It's 7 o'clock, right here at the hall, and then the voting day, where those articles that I voted on is Tuesday, March 11th at the high school. stay for, or you're welcome to leave, but thank you all for coming. Let us know if you want to join a committee.
That's a good idea. Fade? No. Going home. I worked out this morning, so I'm pretty hard, so I'm doing pretty good.
How you doing, Chief? Life is goodish.
How are you?
Life is goodish. Goodish. Like that any day. Goodish ain't bad. Way to go.
Have a good one. The red light's on before we go in.
Thank you, Liz. See you, Bill. Meet him up if you want to have a break.
Yeah, great, one night.
So Scott said that would around the
You and Joe got money, so you can. Hey, when are you taking us out for breakfast? I'm sick of this pain. I'm getting a little tired of this one. Saturday, that's not right. We were getting Saturday? Whip's coming in, put the big screen up.
Thanks, Bob.
Have a great night.
Getting a little tired. Did you see my picture of me and you eating our breakfast or something? I said, that's gonna be you like eating our breakfast.
Not that way. You go right down to Cape Cod, so it's like that.
Slowly working towards
You need a smoke. You need somebody to go sit in the school and watch them. Yes.
Okay, the Honorable Joe,
They were all in our meeting.
we're happy we're here.
I was on the PD, 1986, 85.
Yeah, you go out on the beach with the winds and it's.
Court security guys are put on.
Florida, not to worry about.
It's only about 30 years on
Whole
this.
going on right now. I'm out, see you next time.
Thank you, Joe. What are you gonna do with budget call? Later.
We're going to tell you what I have to see rations on Christmas and Vietnam. I can tell you that. See rations.
Turkey, adopt the financing plan for the tax increment financing.
Billy, I'm making a motion. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a motion made, seconded to adopt the following tax increment financing. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Say aye. 3-0. Thank you. Is that what you're going to say? Good line share.
You look at it. Look at the color you have. So Bill wants to go around the coat.
I don't know if he does that.
You doing the rum table?
Talk budget follow-up?
Sure. I also want your clarification, because what Heather told me about the second precinct is what you showed us last week, which is that the board selects the location and the board selects the district.
But the location as far as being Woodland Hall.
Because Sly mentioned going to the airport.
I talked to the board, I think it was, Monday. Pretty confident application.
Well, I think that was town divided up first of all, but so I think you guys would have to put them out first, the schedule divided, the central polling location is the school now. And then we're gonna have to have it, one might stay in school, then we're gonna have it in the district, might be. But
Well, that's a big petition application, because it's Swanzey,
We can speak at it.
all the law, so I have the law of the document, I'm familiar with all the RSA's about it, so.
chair fell over.
But in that election, it's good, you have to have an assistant moderator out there, you have an assistant town clerk, assistant staff, and stuff like that, and still have, it's around the same way, other than the ballots.
Instead of the motion comes in, the position, or do the end council.
Well,
The one page is better.
yeah, but it's 9 o'clock. The police can pick up all the ballots
It's supposed to
and bring them over. So everybody can
and two election officials, which was all part of the transfer.
So we'll have to get you some
That's the favorite camera to do, right?
The second one.
People need to understand that.
Because on the warrant, I don't think petition articles, I don't think we weigh in on the warrant.
The money when you have to, the petition.
I'm not 100% sure that my.
Because it's 15.
Explaining this correctly.
We can't weigh in.
You have to on that one because it's money.
And
The other
it was money.
5 selectmen, there's no money, so you should, but the 15
Those
guys.
people may not understand that they're signing that petition form for me to once their stuff. They can't just say, oh, I'm driving out of school today, I'm gonna go over there. They have to go.
You can't change the word.
They have to go there.
That one,
But they're
not the 5
anymore.
3 of the 5.
And then, if you cancel
Really,
it,
two votes?
then say,
Sure.
I mean, it's,
What committee do you have?
and with you.
You got your old city.
This is one county.
We're not really.
I assume it's the same chair.
No.
You got Dave.
Well, I know, I was confused.
Yeah, he's flying.
3 polling stations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's sitting his way back in.
BMW. House, the Swanzey, he doesn't have a very good seat.
But that was 100 years
Because
ago.
you're out in Sherman.
Yeah, like 20 people voted. By hand.
Diane,
Pretty sure that
Howard.
I remember
Yeah.
coming over here and all this one.
Yeah.
I remember voting in town hall.
And then John McConnell.
So, this
I
will,
think John.
I emailed that.
He was clerk, and now he's vice chair. And then somebody brand new, Marie somewhere or other, she came in and introduced herself, and I said, oh, you're the clerk?
And she has
Got her. I guess she passed the test on being able to write. 'Cause
when our election was, if we did the election the same day as the school.
I get to sit at the door and go get the pink sheets and put all that.
But I put it in a big sheet, and he must have lost it or something, because then it came time to
Change the number on you.
She,
Maybe somebody called me later.
That's a good seat to have, if things are going too long.
Yeah, just.
That's what he did.
Oh, there's too long.
I can't give you a price yet until after.
They were behind schedule before they started.
Yeah, we did an orientation that took
That's how
forever.
it's going.
Instead of 5 to 15 minutes, it was an hour. So,
It's talking to
We're done with PowerPoint.
4 years that I
Okay.
Justice, or lead justice. Jennifer Rhodes. What is it? Criminal justice.
She was here.
Yeah, she was here right in the beginning, probably just before you got here. She's coming Thursday to testify at municipal county. And Mike's coming.
You gotta go first.
Jimmy,
Go get a coffee while
you catch your ride up with her.
Figure for the money,
Take your ride.
You know, guys.
Did you catch his name? The guy with the suit. The suit that they
Always loud. Hey, you're running with the business.
Any
I
action?
tried to walk on. I didn't realize, I think I was gone, I thought you went to a class or something.
Never seen him at any.
Yeah, I wanted to see it, but I.
Bill's probably not.
It wasn't-
Suit guy,
Yeah.
I felt like-
businessman.
they were.
Should I make a motion to adjourn?
They were talking about handicap system, and then they were talking about programming for the actual regular ballots, not programming for just such. Otherwise, it's like, oh my gosh.
They go on far.
Be the vice secretary.
So I emailed the county end of December, and they were looking at, like, a lot of change. I mean, right, but it wasn't like 100% alignment.
It's like,
Would have been impressive if you did.
last time she says, like, make up and vote, it's government.
Yeah. Well, Bruce gonna write something.
Yes, when you're not.
Good old Bruce gonna write once you have your ballot, I'm like, okay, great, thank you. I can hear that. So I kind of wanted a little bit for Mr. Farmer, because that same thing we're doing here.
Pipes coming around, the pipes on yours. Can't hear you. I hear it.
Thanks for coming. Sorry. Sorry, Mr. Quantin. Mr. Bradley. What are you mumbling about? What are you mumbling about?
No, I'm sorry. I think you've got around the apartment right now. So I think he's definitely, I don't think he's kidding.
No.
So I just said to Michael, I think we should talk to them, or have Michael talk to the department heads about looking at their budget and seeing what they can do to get down around 4 or 5% increase.
Were you at the school, budget here?
No.
I don't believe they're only doing 3 or 4. They got nailed with the same thing we got on the, benefits.
So,
Health insurance, state.
so,
That's
what's the problem?
Teams, Teams talking about their suspenders. So,
What are we at now? And you'd like to see us get down for?
Just what would the impact be to get down to 4 or 5%?
What was our big increases?
Health insurance, control, insurance.
Welfare.
police.
Welfare, we took a lot. Maybe we went to 280, from 200 to 280, or 240 to 280.
The big.
You don't really have control over that.
100% for
Welfare, we don't
We
need
could
that.
make the budget lower, but you can't,
So what are we gonna do?
you can't say, sorry, it's not our budget.
It would be nice if we could. But he went crazy. What did he say, 1.5 or something? 1.4.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that was.
Just to make it funny. I think it's just to make it funny.
But if they look at it the other way, which is the dollars they're paying for taxes now are worth 20% less than they were a couple years ago. You're ahead of it by 10%.
We can't. They were.
All I know is I used to pay 69 cents for a dozen eggs at Aldi's, and I just paid $4.99.
And you can't afford 99. You never go to 8.
$8.39 for an 18 pack at Market Basket.
Well, they're going up even more. I just looked up the line, and not only that, there's gonna be a shortage.
Right.
They killed,
And
what, 300 million birds or something?
And beef.
And beef now, and the bird flu is affecting the beef. So my beef prices, I just texted to Mike, my steak prices, I just sat with the steak lady, the people, and the herds are down like a third. All the herds are way down. So they're starting to use milking cows and beef. It's crazy now. My prices are coming. So I used to pay $30.
Make it cold your ears.
I used to pay $30.
On the horses too.
Yeah, I'll sneak it.
Now you're gonna open up that.
I can get donkey meat.
The what?
That was approved a long time ago.
So,
Jimmy serving horse meat?
No, that it could be used as beef here in the United States.
wow. So I got 15 dozen eggs, it comes in a box like this in flats, and I'm literally $30. $100. Evil. 100 instead. Comes in one straight box, you get 15 dozen, they come in 2.5 pound flats, you know, square flat, and I get a case a week. And it went from 30 to 100.
So you want Michael to,
That's $8 a dozen.
That's
Or
right.
not $8, $7.50.
750 a dozen.
you want?
Like I said, where did you get it for something? Because it's gonna be unheard of, they're all gonna be $8 a dozen.
You want Michael to come up with an argument, or at least how it would affect us, so that at the deliberative, we could answer in some way. What do you want to do? Do you want to cut this? Do you want to cut that? Where do you want the cuts?
Yeah, well, of course, Dan's point is,
It's your across the board.
that's right, the board does it.
Yeah.
So where are you gonna cut?
The police department. I'd like to, what is that percentage that, how does that affect us between that?
That was a higher increase, wasn't it?
Insurance.
The police department?
Yeah, but you know, we based our budget of the police department with so many guys. Why couldn't we drop the guys?
Because then you're gonna hire the
Yeah, but we still got room, don't we? We got a budget of 13 people.
We just got lucky in the position.
It won't happen. I think that that's where we can do it. We can cut out force from 13 to 10.
The other thing it does is psychological, does it with the department? Because then they know we're not hiring, we're not trying to get the full.
And the next year, you're gonna be asking for 15 to 20% increase, because you gotta get back to where you were.
It's a vicious cycle.
Not to bring up something that we're talking before, but this is part of why I didn't want to get by over last year, because now we're looking at bigger increase. It'll be a
Sorry, there's nothing we can do.
Nothing you can do now. I was going to use.
Well, it's not gonna be here, I'm not gonna be here.
You're gonna get
Jimmy
off,
can handle it.
you're gonna get off more money in the city.
It'll be you, Jimmy, and Megan. And Gary will be over there just laughing.
Megan, you help me over here.
I'll help you, Jimmy.
I know you will.
So we're good?
I think so.
What do you mean? I thought we were gonna try to, we ain't gonna try to cut it down?
No, we're going back to the department heads to ask them.
Like, it's gonna work out.
We did it
Basically,
we did it once, remember? We did it, it was where the hell was the meeting?
That was at the high school. No, not the auditorium.
The annex.
Over in the annex.
No, it seems to me.
because that's where he stood. Did he stand up there or the annex when he wanted the police to get the extra?
That was the
That was $30,000
$30,000.
for delivery.
Yeah, I was thinking we were upstairs, but it couldn't have been. But anyway, I remember we did that. What we did is we got pushback and we just gave everybody, I forgot, it was a 4 or 5% increase. That was it, across the board.
We let it figure out.
Well, figured out, I remember Lee Dunham pushed back on that. And as the year went along, it seemed like we got closer and closer and closer to not being able to pay our bills. Because we didn't, well, you were there. It was you and I and Ken. It was my first year as chair.
I don't remember having a hard time paying the bills.
Well, it seemed like we were moving line items around, which happens
That's
every
right. You didn't want to pay the precinct. You kept holding on them.
See, now it's been back to you, now it's been done.
But it's important to know what's being cut.
Okay.
So, now this year, the highway budget should be much better than that plowing. They are sanding and salting, but they're not plowing.
Yeah. Yeah, how much money was just plowing this year? We could save a ton of money there, couldn't we? But
We still had a good amount of pain in the neck, salting, but
You just never brought it in budget.
wow.
It's like, I just did a valuation on a property. The plow guy gets $6,000 a month.
So that's where I got all my money from in the pocket. We were paying $18,000 a year, 3 storms, I'm thinking, so I went in front of the grid, I said, it's fire truck. And they said, what? Fire truck, we'll pay for it. We get 1 grid mile a year, we own the truck, we own the garage, we never do it. Huh?
You got it this year.
That's right. I got a brand new truck sitting in the garage, with salt this year, all paid for.
Oh, you cut back on salt and done more sand so that you don't burn your well.
Well, my wells are way up, but I do put a little salt in a lot. Mostly sand. I just basically sand. When the ice is, that's when I put a little salt in with the sand. Basically, I use sand. Then I have a street sweeper in the spring, sweep up the streets, and we're done. It's nice.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Derek.
You're excited. Me and Gary were